Hi there and welcome to part 4 of our little chat on Dutching. Today I'm going to continue on with some selection processes leading on from the last video in which I describe simply hovering over each of these horses and looking at their past form using the Betfair interface. So literally the last 3 minutes where it says form there, the last 3 entries for this horse, Barrier Peaks 311, and you would do that all the way down. So I'll let you go back to that video if you wish to review what we did there. Today I'm going to look at a different method, which I'm guessing you're all familiar with, especially if you've done daubing in the past. And that is simply to look at the historical record of each horse and its price performance in running. Specifically looking to see if the lowest price that it hit in running is significantly less than the horse's Betfair starting price. Now there's 3 main areas you can get that information. If we switch to my browser here, the first one is the historical data files that Betfair make freely available. So if you download these files here, you'll get the historical data for each horse in each race every day. And you can install that into a database or spreadsheet so you can build up your own data and analyze that as you like. However, I'm going to assume that you haven't done that, or the vast majority of you haven't done that. And what we're going to do is concentrate on a relatively simple process of analysing and gleaning that information. So the 2 other places that you could go to are, first of all, the Timeform site. Now again, I'm guessing most of you are familiar with this. To be able to access the data, however, you need to have an account and sign up, a free account, sign on, and you'll be able to access the corresponding data. So for example, if I open up the first one at Market Raisin today, all you need to do is move your mouse over to each corresponding horse once my screen refreshes, and you'll see that you get this new grid opening up with the horse's last 5 runs. Now all we're going to do here is look down these 2 columns, check the Betfair starting price against its lowest in running price. Now if there's a dash there, that means that the horse won, as you can see confirmed by the result here, first out of 13 runners. So all we do is look down here. Now I wouldn't necessarily advocate looking at more than 5 entries, in other words its last 5 runs. The further back in time you go, in my opinion, the less relevant the data will be, although you can do it and get more data simply by clicking on the horse's name. That'll go off into Timeform, dig in deeper and list all the runs that this horse has had. Okay, but generally speaking, as I say, just look at the last 5 races. So if we go back to the first page here, just hover over each runner in turn, look down the corresponding 2 columns and check to see if there's significant drops in price for all of its races. And you can see for Barrier Peaks, it has dropped significantly in price in its last 5 races. However, there's some caveats that I think you should be aware of. Just doing a simple comparison like this doesn't give you an indication as to why it dropped in price. Now clearly, if you glanced across at the results column, those price drops here for the first 2 are obvious because it came in first, and arguably similarly for the next one because it came in third. But the other 2, it started off at very high odds, and in both cases, well, this one it nearly halved in price, and this one it came significantly in price. However, that price drop wouldn't necessarily have been caused by a huge amount of money backing it in running. It wouldn't take a lot of money to see those price drops. So you need to take those with a pinch of salt. That said, the results here for Barrier Peaks, he clearly is on improving form, as indicated by its past results. And this is where you can start combining this technique with the technique that I showed you in the last video, i.e. looking at its past 3 races and its results in those 3 races. So one would just scan down each of these, moving on to the next horse, and so on and so forth, taking a note of the ones that you fancy. Now there is a third place that you can go, and that's actually the Betfair site, where that information is all available within the Betfair site. And you don't need to log on for that. All you need to do is make sure that the Timeform option here is ticked, and you'll see a little drop down arrow appearing. So if you click on that, you'll get a whole lot of information directly from Timeform displayed in the Betfair interface. Now in this particular case for Betfair, it actually displays the last 6 races. But essentially it's exactly the same information that you would want to use. So again, use Timeform or use the Betfair interface. It's neither here nor there. Essentially you're going to do the same thing. So in this particular race, certainly the first runner, Barrier Peaks, is certainly a horse of interest. And so we'll just scroll down the next one. We can just collapse that arrow and look at the next one, Calidad. And again, we can see, right, it's come in significantly in price there. That's good. It's only halved in price there. That's coming okay. That's marginal. That's okay. And that, I would argue, is potentially, that's halved in price, I suppose. So we're looking at, what, 3 or 4. So that, I would put a question mark over this particular runner just now. So if we move on to the next one, Dancing on Edge, scroll that up. Now he's only had 5 runs recently, actually going back almost a year now. And again, looking down these 2 columns, you will see the bottom 3 are not particularly of interest. So almost immediately you can discount this runner. Escobedo, we can look at that one, same thing. We just scan down these columns. And again, I'm not feeling it with this runner. I think you do have to be especially aware of high starting prices. That one, its last run was okay, and it only came 3rd. So that's a no, that would be a no, that's a no. So again, I would discount. Based on this particular selection process, I would discount Escobedo as well. Nipping down to Lone Star. If I can get my mouse to stop scrolling. Yeah, well, that's a win, so that's good. That's marginal, I would say. That's good. That's marginal. That's good, and that's good. So again, I would put a question mark on Lone Star as well. So we have a question mark both on Lone Star and Dancing on Edge, was it? I should really have noted this down. No, beg your pardon. Question mark on Calidad and Lone Star. So we'll go back and look at those in a minute once we've covered the rest of them. Kimberly Eve. All the odds are really, really high. Unless you were going back nearly a year, I would ignore that one. Mr. Palm Tree. Okay, no. Oh yeah, those are 2 wins, but those are going back. Yeah, its most recent run was 2 years ago. So I wouldn't be interested in Mr. Palm Tree at all. And then finally, Les Fremantle. Again, although the runs are recent, its odds are really, really high, and it hasn't come in significantly in most of them. So that's a no as well. So let's quickly revisit Lone Star and what was the other one? Caladat. So that's okay, that's a no, that's good, that's good, that's good, and that's good. And quickly glance at its recent three-runner form. We're looking at, if you remember what we did last video, 3 plus 7 is 10 and 2, that's 12. So that's marginal. Whereas if we looked at Lone Star, I think was the other one we wanted to pencil in. Where are you? There we go. Lone Star, we're looking at, yeah, that's good, good, good. Marginal, that's good, and that's good. And we've also got a better recent form, 241. So I would say the picks in this particular race are Lone Star and Barrier Peaks. Now if I switch to Fairbot, there's 41 minutes before the race starts. If we look at this sort of return we'll be getting, yeah, it's not too bad. Keeping in mind there's a bit of a difference between odds here. Remember from the last video I was saying ideally you want to try and keep the odds relatively close. But given that there's 41 minutes, let's bash on to the next race and pencil in what we're going to do for that one. So that will be the 145 at market raising. Now I'm suspecting that it's likely to be the top two, but they're relatively short in price. Okay. Yeah, you can see the favourite here. Excuse me. Its most recent runs have all been short in price. There's all odds on in 2 of them, and just over evens in another 2 in the first 4. And when the odds get that short, it's hard to judge, even though it obviously went on to win. Let me just glance at the next couple of horses, because I think this race might be a no-go. Right, there's only 2 selections in there, so that's no information there really. The third one down, yeah, marginal, well, it's almost half, that's not too bad. That's no, no, marginal, okay. I think this is a no-hooper. This is not a race to get involved in. So let's just nip across to the next one, which will be the Taunton 2 o'clock. Okay. So again, this is a novice hurdle. You'll see the bottom half of the market is all high odds. So really, you can actually cut down some of your analysis by ignoring a big bunch of those. Remember what I said in the last video? That there's a stat hovering around the internet somewhere that says that something like 72% of races are won by one of the horses in the first 3 of the market. And that would certainly hold true, I think, for novice races. So I think we can get away with just looking at the first 4 runners here. So the first one's okay, that was a win. Second's okay, third's not too bad. And now we're starting to go up back in time. This horse hasn't actually run this year yet, although obviously has run this season. But that's not too bad. That's Hometown Hero. So I'll take a quick note of that before I forget, given there's a few runners in this. Future Investment, same thing. Let's see what we've got. First one's okay, even though he finished 10 out of 13, he's halved in price. Next one's okay, that's marginal, marginal, and that's marginal. So this, for me, is not a pick. So we can ignore future investment, I would suggest. Bold reaction. There's only 4 runs here, and they're all marginal. So we can ignore that one as well. Let's go down to Noliador. So the first one, that's not too bad. No, yes, 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 marginal. So this is potentially a pick. However, its previous form, if you glance over at the results, it breaks through the selection ideas I was illustrating to you in the last video. So this is probably not a pick as well. And then we get into the higher priced runners. So for me, this, given that there's only the one selection, this is not a pick either. And that's fine. You know, the chances of you finding suitable selections using this method, or indeed the last method I showed you, in every race is unlikely, and that's fine. So that's the selection process in a nutshell, relying on the price movement found in the historical record on Betfair, either by downloading the files yourself or by making use of them being available either within Betfair or indeed by going to the Timeform site directly. Given the amount of time, and again I want to try and keep this video a little bit shorter than the last one, what we'll do is we'll skip ahead and see the first race in action, where we do actually have some picks, Barrier Peaks and Lone Star. We should be okay in terms of potential return. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll skip ahead to that race in half an hour. Okay, we're approaching the start of the first race at Market Raisin today. And if you recall, the selections for this race were Barrier Peaks and Lone Star. You see Lone Star has drifted somewhat since I was last in the market. And you can also see there's been quite a bit of money coming in for one of the discounted horses, Escobedo. It's been shortening steadily and has subsequently just started to drift back out to its original price. So that's interesting to see how that performs in the race. So yeah, the Barrier Peaks and Lone Star are the 2 picks. You can see that the profit and loss comfortably meets my preferred preference of being at least equal to the stake I'm using. You'll see that I'm in simulation mode today. And keeping in mind what I've said in the past about if you have particularly large gaps between the odds of your runners. So you might want to think about using the variable profit option here, but it wouldn't necessarily be something I'd look at in this particular race. It's only if the gap is really quite large that I would think about doing it. Okay, so just about off time. Let's just submit that and we'll see how it goes. Once again, we'll let this race run through to its conclusion, though keep in mind that the idea here is to actually trade out for a green. I haven't set up an automatic green out position, so keep an eye on the green up all button here during the race to see what sort of levels you could potentially green out at. Typically for this type of race, I'd be looking at something like a 25 to 30 pound profit target would be my preference. But as I say, we'll just let this race run through to its conclusion and then we'll just wrap up this particular video. It's already over 20 minutes long, so I was trying to keep it short. The thing about this particular method and the method I showed you last, and hopefully I've indicated to you during this video, you can actually combine the two. This particular technique of looking purely for historical drops in prices is not something that I would necessarily rely on as a selection process in its own right. I think there's too many random elements in there that can throw you off. What I'd rather use this for is a mechanism just to confirm or otherwise a selection that I may have made using another process, just to back up that selection process, if you like. So certainly the first two, using the previous three form figures combined with this technique, I think can be quite useful. But it can also be used, as you'll see once we get on to looking at pace maps and tipsters and so on. You can use these things just to help to reinforce your convictions, as it were. Okay, so there are two picks today, Barrier Peaks and Lone Star. Certainly the Barrier Peaks has had a very good run of late, and he certainly seems to be the favoured pick looking at time form. So we'll see how he gets on. 2.5 mile race, so this will take about 5 minutes all in all. So you can already see we're barely 25% into the race, and we're already starting to hit potentially double figure profits. So that's all a good sign. So what I'm trying to do here is just give you various angles for the actual selection process itself. I'm not trying to influence you in any way with regard to exit strategies. I think that is very much personal preference, and so I'll let you decide when you want to out or come out of your trade, whether that be hitting a particular profit target, or whether that be at some point predefined in the race, for halfway round, for example. That's really up to you, very much personal preference. So I think it's worthwhile, however, if you choose any of these selection processes, to run through them in simulation mode, and don't actually go in with a view to trading out, but just watch the race and see how the numbers chop and change to give you an idea of what sort of level is a sensible trade out position for you. So this point, for example, halfway round, at £20, a potential profit there is clearly maybe a good position to come out, because the race will start in the next minute or two to start to get reasonably frantic. But as you've seen so far, we've had a green position virtually the whole race, which is the thing that we're looking for. The last thing we want is to find ourselves in a red early on and it stays there forever. You will tend to find, using these techniques, that the longer races are just a little bit calmer, generally speaking, unless, of course, one of your selections falls. That's always a bit of a bummer. Whereas with a sprint race, if one or both of your horses gets a bad start, you can be in a lot of bother right away. So this is looking pretty good in actual fact. You'll see both runners are well in the green, and we're up to £60 near enough potential profit. There we are, 90. So this is looking really good. But that's how you go about using historical price drops. So make use of the Timeform site or the facility as it's replicated within the Betfair site. Or if you have any sort of programming skills or spreadsheet and database skills, seriously consider starting to download the historical data from the Betfair site. I'll flash through to that page in a minute once this race is finished, but it's looking pretty favourable for Barrier Peaks. But if you've got the skills to build up your own database that you can analyse at your leisure, that's certainly the way to go. But what I wanted to do here was to just show you, using the Betfair website or the Timeform website, a quick method of making your selections. And you can actually see from here, just based on the odds that are flashing past at the moment, there are 2 picks. Lucas, I'm not watching the race, I should say, and I don't have any radio commentary on. But as you can see, our 2 picks look like they're the first 2 over the line. So that's that was a job well done, though I say so myself. Okay, I think we can assume that that's a successful trade. Let me just quickly flash back to my browser. That's the website you want to go to be able to download win and place market records for historical data. And you can do so not only just for GB, but Ireland, Australia, USA, and South Ireland. And they've also started doing in recent years data for UK greyhounds as well. So you might want to be interested in that. And you can obviously filter this list. I currently have it filtered just for GB only. And if you remove the filter, you'll see a whole load of things in there. So you can see there, South Africa win, USA win, and so on. So make use of this stuff at this URL here, promo.betfair.com/betfairsp/prices. And that will allow you to build up your own database. In the meantime, of course, just make use of the facilities at Timeform and or directly on the Betfair site. Okay, so it looks like Barrier Peaks, which was the favourite and certainly the favoured horse, has done the business, with Lone Star coming in second. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap that up. Next time, we'll start having a look at, I think we'll do the Naps Checker Tipsters stuff next time around, but that will be towards the end of the week, perhaps the beginning of next week. Okay, thank you.